Welcome to American Trucker with your host, Raymond White, telling the story of those who move America. Today we have Doug Marcello, litigation attorney at Saxon & Stump and the chief legal officer at Blue Wire. Doug is known as the trucking and defense attorney with a CDL. Doug, welcome.
Great to be here. Honored to be on the show. Thank you very much for having me, Ray.
Absolutely, my friend. Well, hey, share with us about your background.
I've been doing this now in insurance defense work in general for 42 years, been an attorney for 42 years. For the last 25 to 30 of those, I focused on trucking defense. In fact, I've done it pretty much exclusively through that time. Full-time practice, my last trial was just about 4 or 5 weeks ago, so in the throes of it. I've had cases in 38 states, been pro-hocked in those states, trials in about 8 or 9 states. I'm also, as you indicated, the chief legal officer of Blue Wire, LLC. We're a tech company that was formed about 3 or 4 years ago. We analyze trucking company data to identify vulnerabilities to excessive verdicts, particularly nuclear verdicts.
Wow, I love that. I'm looking forward to digging into that. I have to ask you before we get this really going here is what did your coworkers say at the time, and maybe tell us at what point you got your CDL. But one thing that came to mind to me was I wonder what his coworkers were saying to him when he was going through that process.
No, great question. And what happened is I've been with a law firm back in 2004, 2005. I'd been there about 17 years. And started doing trucking work and picking up more work. The word had started to get around. Several other folks in the firm wanted to get involved in the trucking work, so probably about 6 or 7 of us started the classroom part of that. I would say of those, maybe 4 or 5 completed the classroom part. Then it came to go out in the driving on the range, and only myself and one other attorney did that. She and I got our CDL in November of 2004. None of the other folks completed it. And in January of 2005, she and I went out and started our own law firm to focus on trucking defense work.
Hey, the two most committed.
That's right.
That's great. Well, the minute a serious or fatality accident happens, in your opinion, what should a motor carrier do? And that's kind of just putting us right into it, but I'm excited to hear your thoughts on it.
Absolutely, Raymond. We bemoan our fate with all those billboard attorneys around as we drive down through the interstates. We have an advantage that none of them have, the advantage of immediacy. And if we aren't prepared, if we don't take advantage of it, we lose that. We'll squander the greatest asset we have. When the accident occurs, at that point, you should have an emergency response plan in place already. Think of it. You're a football coach. Your team has the ball on the opponent's 3-yard line, seconds to go. You need a touchdown to win. You're not going to wait till then to draw up the play, decide who's going to run the play, and then try to figure out how you're going to find them on the bench. That call comes in at 3 a.m. That's not when you should draw up your response plan. It is, again, trying to think of who you want to respond to the accident and then try to find them in the middle of the night. So the primary thing is have a plan in place, execute the plan. Usually a lot of it goes, number one, talk to the driver. I provide folks lists for dispatchers to go through a checklist, make sure that they have the information, and it's almost like mission control. You've got someone moved from the adrenaline saying, okay, make sure that the scene's secure, get your triangles or flares out, check for injuries, or is there a hazmat spill, down through the list. Yeah. Usually in terms of the response itself, the next thing is to get an independent adjuster out there. Document the scene, not talk to the driver about the facts of the case. Often the independent adjuster will be the one, if a drug test is FMCSA required, can help take the driver to the drug test and follow from there. Then it's a question of, is this something that response from an accident reconstructionist or other expert needs? So that's kind of as I see it, as it unfolds on it. We do a lot of work on our end. When the call comes into us, I'll talk to the driver, protect it with attorney-client privilege. Our office will also start to look for news stories, also start to look for social media of the other person or anything else that's out there on this.
No, absolutely. Well, like you mentioned, it is mission critical. Um, Changing gears just a little bit, motor carriers, I often hear that they feel like the more liability insurance they buy, the more an at-fault accident's likely to get settled for. What is your opinion on that, and is that often the case?
Uh, yes, which is the worst answer a host can get, Raymond. I appreciate,
No, yeah.
but it's always people say to me, how much insurance should I have? And it's like, you've got the dual-edged sword. The more you have, the more they're going to want, and the more you'll have to pay. The flip side is, do you have enough that's going to protect your assets? So a lot of it comes down to the risk aversion and the analysis of the trucking company itself. I was just listening to a presentation this morning on YouTube when I was on the treadmill by a professor, which, Raymond, gives you a insight into the sad status of my life. That's what I'm doing at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
But he was saying, and he's made a lot of money off of startups and entrepreneurs. He's saying he does not have health insurance. He's probably mid to late 60s.
Well,
And he's looking at it and saying, look, the health insurance that I would want for my family and I would cost me probably $40,000-$50,000 a year. I've gone self-insured, haven't bought health insurance for the last 5 years. 200,000, 250,000 can pay for a lot of medical bills, And well, my reaction was, I think, probably the same as yours. It's like, you don't have health insurance? What are you kidding me? You look at it in terms of the analysis on it.
that's
When
right.
the American Tort Research Institute did a study a couple of years ago about insurance, and it's part of what I call the ATRI trilogy: nuclear verdicts, smaller verdicts, and insurance. What they found is a lot of companies, as I'm sure you know, are taking a larger deductible, larger retention. It's out of their own pocket in order to. They're not going to reduce premiums; they're just going to slow the increase of them. But the companies that did that seem to have a less total cost of risk than the companies that didn't take on the larger deductibles retention, because they're able to control their own losses. So that kind of goes back a long way of getting to your question in terms of you're looking at the total cost of risk here, what your premium is going to be, what you're going to invest in safety, and what your out-of-pocket is going to be, in molding all of that in terms of what your level of insurance and coverage is going to be.
No, I love that, and you don't have to pull back any strings on this. That's a very similar answer that I give when I'm asked is on how much to buy, because it is true, like you said, especially if you're if you're on a first dollar program, the more if it's a bad incident, the more money an insurance company has available to settle, the more that the plaintiff attorney is probably going to ask for, and there's a good chance it might hit that number.
Yeah, absolutely.
But no, I love what you said about the total cost of risk, and when you have the skin in the game, performance seems to have increased based on what you said.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing, it kind of goes back to your prior question in terms of the response to the accident. You've got to prepare to take care of yourself. And I've seen too many trucking companies out there, Raymond, who think that, well, I'm going to report it to the insurance company and all's good. And all insurance claim services are not created equal. And so that's
right.
That's something that and I just did a recent article about it on Substack and the newsletter I send out. It basically was the gist of it. You got to be prepared to take care of yourself. Otherwise, you're gonna, it's coming off of your bottom line if you don't.
No, you're exactly right. Well, I in doing some research, I had saw that you in the past had mentioned that it's better to get sued by the billboard attorney than otherwise. Can you elaborate on this?
Well, maybe the gist of it is what I look at is it's better to try to take action and sue first on arraignment, because what we're looking to do is to take the offensive on it. Most case jurisdiction, wherever the accident happens, you can get sued wherever you do business. As a trucking company, we do business everywhere. So that if we have an argument on liability and we have suffered damages, property damage or cargo loss, then what we want to do is to sue in the more conservative jurisdiction where the accident occurred, rather than let them billboard attorneys drag us into what the American Tort Reform Association calls judicial hellholes.
Yeah.
And so, we get the jump on them. We lock in jurisdiction. I've even had cases where our property damage is below the state's arbitration limit. We go in, we win, and even though they'd gotten a plaintiff attorney from one of the judicial hellholes, we were able to shut it out because we established and got raised judicata, judicially established, that we weren't at fault for the accident, and take that advantage on it.
Wow. Wow. Well, I love that. And what do you think the best way for a trucking company to navigate, both taking care of themselves and, because I know you work with a lot of insurance companies. I'm sure insurance companies are a lot of your clients. So what is the best way that a trucking company can manage both of those and, I guess, hold their insurance company accountable might be the best way to phrase it?
Yeah, a lot of it starts with the interactions you have with your brokers, because they can be your best advocate with the insurance companies. When you get your policy, your broker, work with that insurance company to make sure you know what's going on. Reach out to them in terms of, am I going to have the right to choose counsel? Because I'm sure a lot of the insurance companies have very good, very qualified counsel, but at the same time, there's some circumstances where that counsel is more reliant on the insurance company and may be, acting not necessarily against the interests of the trucking company, but more for the insurance company in terms of evaluation, et cetera. So that's one of the key things. The other thing in that is to, when you get a policy, and everybody's going to put a good spin in terms of what their claim service is, ask for references. I said in the recent article, you wouldn't hire a dispatcher without calling and making a few calls to find out where they worked and how they were. How do you do that with $500,000, $1 million of coverage of insurance that you're required to have? Could cost you $500,000 out of your pocket in many instances. So what you want to do is to check with other folks. How's the claim service? Are they responsive? Can I get them on the weekend? Are they going to protect the zero, as my friends at Protective Insurance say? It's a no value case. Well, then let's fight hard to make sure it stays a no value case. That's the big thing I think that's out there on that.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's often a complaint, and I'm sure you've heard it before, that plaintiff attorneys generally do a better job than defense attorneys at working together on their tactics, sharpening their skills. What are your thoughts on this? And then, I definitely put you in a different category than that, but what do you do to compete and win against the plaintiff attorneys and all of the retreats they have and the schools maybe they have and all of the courses they have to all share and get better than the general defense population?
First part of your question, unquestionably, right? It is, we don't see the sharing. We don't have the interaction. We had, and with Blue Wire, we had set up an online community, and because we've heard a lot of times defense attorneys and insurance companies go, we should share information. We set it up. We invested in it. We had a full-time person who was going to manage the online community. We got about 350 people in it. We went to some of one of the largest trucking defense organizations and said, look, we will let you use it for free. Come in, we'll pay over $100,000 a year between the management of it, the operation of it, et cetera, and no interest in it on that.
Wow.
So what I try to do is look at what I can, what has been shared. I was just at the the ATA litigation conference a couple weeks ago. Look through some of those. One of the other things I try to do on it is to look, outside of just trucking litigation. What can we learn from med mal, products liability, those type of folks? One of the other things is just look in general. A trial is a production. The people
Mhm.
who are on the jury are the folks who are watching television, YouTube, TikTok, things like that. And I'm not looking to put on a show, but I'm looking to be sensitive as to what their expectations are and present information in a way that they can do it. I start with the theory that most folks come off not either not liking and or not trusting attorneys. And if I can come off, I believe that if you're truthful with them, they'll like you. And if they like you, even if you don't win, they won't hurt you. And that's gotten me through 42 years. And I've won a number of cases I probably shouldn't have. I absolutely shouldn't have. But,
Wow.
you just got to go forward, present it in an understandable manner. Uh, if there's bad stuff there, put your bad stuff out there and address it. But just move forward and don't act like an attorney. You know,
Yeah, no, I'm telling you. What do you think? What do you think caused the lack of sharing and engagement? I have a thought that comes to mind, but I'd like to hear what you have to say.
well, I'm interested in yours. I think there's a number of things. There is this perception of competition between defense firms, that there's a
Mm.
finite number of trucking companies and insurance companies out there. Is one thing. The other thing is, for defense attorneys to do it, many times it means sacrificing billable hours. And so, they are loath to do that without some type of compensation on it. Is some of the thoughts that come to mind.
Yeah, one thing I was
Or
thinking about is it's kind of like the trucking companies that take more of a share of the risk. They're more motivated, I
right,
think, to be safer companies. And truthfully, you hate to say it, but the plaintiff attorneys have more of a financial incentive in every case. And
yeah,
defense attorneys, again, it's probably hard to break out of that mold. Like kind of almost exactly what you said, which is it's billable hours. It's almost like a steady flow of income where maybe it doesn't incentivize the creativity or the drive to perform better at a higher level.
no, I think that's an excellent thought on that too. It very much so. Sometimes there's a notion of, gee, I don't want to share my secrets or my great ideas with other people. I'm not that smart, Raymond. I put it out there. If I can find it, heck, everybody can find it. And if it's not a good idea, I'd rather it be reviewed almost like an academic paper. Tell me tell me it's a bad idea and tell me why, and that keeps me from going down the wrong road.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Uh, Tell me about Blue Wire. And I know you kind of gave a high overview, but maybe some of the background of why you thought that was important and maybe the impact you guys are having, and then also maybe more details on the services offered and why it should be an interest to a company.
Good friend of mine, Steve Bryan, was CEO of Vigilo for a number of years. They sold probably about 5, 6 years ago, and Steve worked on for the purchaser of it, and then left there during COVID. The commute from his home in Portland to Denver precluded him being real active in it. Reached out to me and said, "Hey, look, we have been able to use technology to address a number of things." He has, lived as I have in the trucking industry, and we are very blessed in terms of what the trucking industry has provided to us. We want to do some service for them. And the talk that you see all the time, transport topics and otherwise, are nuclear verdicts. Steve said, I think we can apply technology to do the analysis to help to address these nuclear verdicts, or at least to protect companies against it. So what Steve did, his chief technologist from tech person from Vigilo, and another founding partner of ours, we got together and created Blue Wire. And what it does is we take the trucking data, do an analysis, and look at what are the vulnerabilities that are going to expose a company to an excessive verdict. Nuclear verdicts, or somebody's got risk retention, The type of vulnerability or the type of exposure that would take a no pay verdict to $25,000 or, $25,000 to $100,000. And in a world where 90 to 95% of cases get settled ahead of time, it's kind of the nuclear settlements that are out there as well. So what we
Absolutely.
look for, is to analyze various parts of. There's kind of two elements to it. There is what we call the GAP score, generally available public data, and we analyze 9 categories of data from CSA, out of service, crash rate, violation rate, down to the amount that trucking company operates in the judicial hellhole area to increase their exposure. Give those companies a rating, 1 to 100, 100 being the best. All 760,000 trucking companies. That has been very responsive. That product has been great interest to insurance companies, insurance brokers, freight brokers, be able to help them vet companies, or alternatively for insurance brokers, to help these companies improve so that they can get lower insurance rates or at least get coverage in many instances. Within that, we have a product then, the original product was a motor carrier product, and that breaks it down even further within the motor carrier into the various elements you can do. Plus it adds a component beyond compliance. Back in 2014 or 15, Congress told the FMCSA to develop a program that recognizes trucking companies' investment in safety beyond meeting the regulations, beyond compliance. That was done in 2014, 2015, Raymond, in the ironically named FAST Act, because FMCSA still hasn't done it. So what we did is said, look, we're going to incorporate it in what we do. So we have an element in there for the companies, the motor carriers in that platform can say, this is what we have, and this is how much we've invested in it. So we can bring that score, their story, put it together in the true story of who they are, to present it, be it at trial, at mediation, or to their insurance broker, underwriters, people like that. So that's what we're looking to do and are doing on a daily basis.
That's great. Well, I can tell you that's so needed, and it's something that I'm definitely interested to talk to you about, and how I can help take that to clients and definitely spread the word to whether they're clients of mine or not, but get more people behind this, because I think that, and I think if you combine that with the response action plan you talked about at the beginning when that bad accident occurs, I mean, that seems to me like a better recipe for success than maybe what's out there right now.
Yeah, with regard to nuclear verdicts and exposure, it's more like a natural disaster than it is many things. We can't stop a hurricane. We can't prevent it. We don't know exactly when it's coming, but in a lot of areas of the country, we know it's coming. And what we've got to do is to strengthen our infrastructure and prepare for the response to that. Well, that's the way it is with these accidents, because the sad reality of our industry is that, number one, we're involved in accidents, whether they're our fault or not. And number two, there's going to be a lawsuit out of the accident, whether it's our fault or not. And that's what we got to do on that. So, that'd be great, because we look at Blue Wire more as a movement than we do, just as a product or some business. And that's why we started Blue Wire Connect, the online platform we talked about. We're looking to generate something that's going to really serve, help, and benefit the trucking industry.
I love that. Yeah, more than you know. Doug, what are the common mistakes that you see trucking companies make that set themselves up for, large settlements and verdicts? I know we've hit on a few, but is there just some, glaring issues that you see that are unfortunately very common?
One of the primary things is, in today's world, is data. It used to be that the definition of a truck is a mechanical device that hauled freight. Now it's basically a technological device that hauls freight. And the trucking companies are drinking from a fire hose. There's stuff on that they don't even know it's coming in OEM to them. So I think the key things there are, and I gave a talk like this at the ATA Safety Conference about a year or two ago, is number one, identify what you have, because many companies don't know what they have until the accident happens, and the accident reconstruction is fools it for them. Number two, analyze what you have. What are the indicators, or what is the data that's most related to your accidents? If you're driving the 80 in Nebraska, it's probably overspeed. If you're on the GW or trying to go on the Cross Bronx, it's probably hard brakes. But analyze that and then monitor it, and then in
Yeah.
addition to that, discipline the drivers who violate it, because in today's world, you don't have the money to keep a bad driver like that. That's just going to, that's going to inflate the verdict on it. And the other thing is, in today's world with drivers, is, you can't look at it as filling a seat, because that seat you fill, you've got to envision that they're going to fill the seat beside you in the courtroom. And is that the driver and the record you want to sit beside and defend at the time of trial? So, I hear a lot of times and appreciate that's their job, operations, saying, look, we got these loads to move. We're losing money by not moving these loads. But I think part of the analysis has to be, in fact, the primary analysis has to be, how many of those loads are we going to have to move to pay for one bad accident we have? Or more, put in other terms, how many miles are our good drivers going to have to drive, and are we going to have to pay them in order to pay for that one bad driver we hired just to cover a couple loads? So I think that's some of the biggest challenges they have out there, Rick.
I love that analogy about who do you want to be sitting next to him in court, because I can already see the faces of company owners when they, you make them think about it like that.
Perspective, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. What mistakes and what things should trucking companies be on the lookout for when managing their insurance company and their claims handling of ongoing communication? Or it doesn't even have to be the insurance company, maybe the defense attorney. I mean, if they don't hire you, what are some of the things that they should be on the lookout for, red flags, to maybe know that a case is not going the right way, and maybe a course correction is needed?
Yeah, I think number one, Raymond, is what you said: communication. What is the information? What's the feedback at the key points that we have? The next thing is in terms of the recommendations and the experience, and a lot of that comes from the quality of the information you're getting based upon the experience of the attorney. I refer to the old Conway Twitty song, "Don't call him a cowboy till you see him ride." And I go to a lot of these conferences and I hear these people pontificating, but there aren't a lot of folks out there trying cases. And so, it is not something you can just pick up and do, and it's not a matter of learning the rules of evidence. It's an art, and you got to go based on that. And I think that's some of the key things there. One of the big things from the trucking company perspective is to be prepared when that accident happens, that you have somebody you can go to during those critical first hours on it. And there are times, and I've had folks who have told me they've called and sat on hold for 2 hours on a weekend for an insurance company, never got anybody. Monday was a holiday, and they didn't hear anybody from Tuesday after a fatal accident on a weekend on that.
Wow.
And that just, you can't have that. You got to know going into it, you're a team. There's immediacy involved, and you got to work together on that.
Wow. Well, yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. I couldn't imagine a fatality accident. That's just, that's way too long. Are you, one question I have for you, Doug, is when a plaintiff attorney is, of course, getting all of the data from the trucking company, when we're talking about telematic data, maybe just telematic data on the general company, how far back can they go? And I'm sure it's a fight that you fight to try to condense what they're looking at and maybe what the cases and the court's looking at. But how far back and how broad of data can a plaintiff attorney, I guess, scrape and use to paint, use their reptile tactics to paint a poor picture?
There is, I heard someone one time give a definition of hearsay as whatever a judge says it is. And the scope of discovery, regrettably, is whatever a judge says it is. Now, I try to frame that like a catcher with a pitch. And, for example, I had a case in North Carolina. A federal judge gave an opinion one time, and God bless him, he took the time to understand the FMCSA rules in regard to hours of service, which a lot of times judges just rather than spending the time on it, I'm just going to say 30 days, or I'm going to say 60 days. I'm going to pick a number. And the judge in North Carolina said, agreed with me, and said, look, beyond the date of the accident and preceding 7 days, if there's no violation of hour service in there, what difference does it make the preceding 22 days on that? It has nothing to do with this. So that's some of the things I try to frame, and I try to frame it from a logical standpoint as well, rather than arbitrary, because a lot of times the plaintiffs will just pick an arbitrary number or throw a number out there, or base it upon, we want 6 months because you have to keep 6 months of logs and things like that. Is come back and say, like, look, here's the logical standpoint. Here's where we're at. This should be fair. Now, at the same time, I'll tell the clients to, whenever possible, to keep as much as they can, because if they run into a situation where the court thinks otherwise, you don't want to get into a situation of spoliation in that regard. But I think the primary thing we want to do is to, preserve it, keep it reasonable, that type of thing.
No. Well, yeah, thank you for sharing that. Well, Doug, you've been doing this over 40 years. You're still getting on the treadmill at 5 a.m. I mean, what keeps you going? I mean, what's driving you? I know you're passionate about this, but what keeps you getting after it every day?
I think it's just to kind of find the life that you enjoy and live that life. And the challenges and the trucking community and I find the industry to be more of a family. A lot of the companies are family owned or had originated with families. Folks I've gotten to know and been blessed to know through the ATA Safety Council. We've shared our personal joys and griefs together, and it's come to be somewhat of a family on it. And so, I focus, on what I do and my family, and find a balance between there, and it's going well. So, in terms of retirement, I have people going, at your advanced age, you think, and it's a matter of, just finding that balance and keep going. And as long as it's enjoyable, as long as it's not onerous, getting up, every day. There are bad days, Raymond. We get those attorneys who call us or send us those nasty grams. But as long as the big picture and deal with them, and I find that having done this long, I get, my response to them is more tempered, and my blood pressure is lower than what it was before. So that's kind of what it does it.
Absolutely. Well, hey, this has been great, and the trucking business is essential to our country, and you play a critical role in helping trucking companies. So, Doug, I appreciate you sharing more than you know.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here.